Diogenes was lying on the ground sunbathing when Alexander's shadow covered his face. The conqueror opened his mouth to offer anything the philosopher desired. Diogenes responded with 4 words. And Alexander, who had never lost a battle, stood still, without response. The man standing before him had conquered Persia, Egypt, and half the known world. He was in his early 20s. He was the son of a king, a disciple of Aristotle, and he carried on his face the conviction of someone who truly believes he is touched by the gods. His name was Alexander, and he had traveled to Corinth, the busiest city in Greece, not to negotiate, not to fight, but to see an old man. An old man who slept in a clay barrel. Alexander approached surrounded by generals, soldiers, and courtiers who kept a respectful distance. His shadow covered the dirt floor where the old man lay, sunbathing. The man in the barrel opened one eye. He didn't get up. He didn't bow his head. I didn't say anything. It was Alexander who spoke first. I am Alexander the Great. Tell me what you want, and I will give it to you. And the old man, without moving his body, responded with a phrase that none of those present has ever forgotten. A sentence that contained neither insult, nor flattery, nor fear. Just a naked truth. The kind that hurts precisely because it's so simple. To understand the weight of those words, you need to understand who this man was, where he was born, what he had lost, and why, of all the philosophers in Greece, he was the only one who lived without walls, without disciples, and without shame. Diogenes was born in Sinope, a Greek colony on the edge of the Black Sea, around 412 BC. His father was a money changer, a man who worked with coins. And it was precisely this detail that shaped Diogenes' entire philosophy in a way that no book could have taught. While still young, Diogenes was banished from Sinope. The version most accepted by historians says that he and his father were accused of counterfeiting coins, of adulterating the city's money. Others say that Diogenes participated consciously. What matters is not the crime. What matters is what Diogenes did with his exile. He went to Athens. He looked for Antisthenes, the founder of the Cynic school, from the Greek kynikos, which means like a dog. And when Antisthenes tried to drive him away with a stick, Diogenes is said to have stuck out his head and said, "Hit it. There's not enough hardwood to make me leave while you still have something to teach." Antisthenes accepted him. What Diogenes learned at this school was not philosophy in the sense we know today. It was not abstract theory. It was not treatises on the nature of being. It was a practice, a way of living that defied every social convention the Greeks held sacred. The Cynical school taught that virtue is the only real wealth, that everything else, money, fame, power, comfort, are golden chains. Beautiful on the outside, prisons from the inside. Diogenes carried this further than anyone else. He threw away the wooden bowl when he saw a child drinking water with his hands. "A child taught me that I still carry unnecessary things," he would have said. He slept in a pitos, a large ceramic vessel used to store grain, at the entrance to a temple in Athens, and later in Corinth. He didn't have a house. He had no properties. He had no family, wealth, position, or reputation to defend. And that was exactly what made him the freest man in Greece. When Alexander came to him that sunny day in Corinth, Diogenes was not just an eccentric beggar. He was the most famous and most feared philosopher in the Greek world, not for what he wrote, but for what he refused. Alexander had reasons for wanting to meet Diogenes. He had grown up hearing about the old man with the barrel. Aristotle, his own teacher, spoke of Diogenes with a mixture of admiration and irritation, as someone who had reached the same conclusion the wrong way, or perhaps the more honest way. And Alexandra, who was young and still trying to prove something to the world, wanted to be approved by this man. This is important. The most powerful conqueror in known history did not go to Diogenes to humiliate him. It was to be recognized by him. When he arrived at the square where the philosopher was sunbathing, Alexandra stood still for a moment, observing that man with a thin body, tanned skin from the sun, lying on the ground as if the entire world were his mattress. The generals around Alexander were uncomfortable. This was not how a king was welcomed. Alexander took a step forward. "I am "Alexandra," he said, "they say you are the freest man in Greece. I admire that. Tell me what you want: fortune, land, protection, and it will be yours." The generals waited for the old man to get up and thank you, that perhaps he would ask for something modest, as every wise man does when he wants to appear humble but still accept the favor of a king. Diogenes didn't move. He looked at Alexandra with that expression that those who knew him described as completely devoid of reverence, not anger, not contempt, but a genuine indifference that is far more devastating than any insult. It could be a legend. It probably is. But what this scene captures doesn't have to be literal to be true. Power recognizes freedom and knows it will never achieve it. "Get out of my light." Just that. There was no philosophical discourse. There was no elaborate lesson on the vanity of power. There was no provocation calculated to impress those present. Just a direct request. "You are between me and the sun. Get out of the way." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that weighs heavily. The generals didn't know whether to laugh, protest, or retreat. They looked at Alexandra, waiting for a reaction, anger perhaps, or the order to arrest that insolent person. Alexander stood still for a moment, and then he smiled. He turned to his generals and said, and this is one of the most quoted phrases of antiquity, "If I weren't Alexander, I would like to be Diogenes." But pay attention to what this sentence reveals. Alexander did not say, "What an admirable man." He said, "If I weren't me." There is a condition there, a built-in impossibility. Alexander recognized Diogenes' greatness, and at the same time admitted that he himself could never achieve it, because to be Diogenes, he would have to give up everything that was Alexander. And he couldn't do that. Diogenes, according to the story, did not respond to the compliment. He closed his eyes again. He continued sunbathing. There is a Greek word that summarizes what Diogenes had: autarkeia, not financial independence, no accumulation, the opposite. The condition of someone who doesn't need anything external to feel whole. Those who have autarkeia do not refuse gifts out of arrogance. Refusal, because there was nothing there to refuse. To refuse a gift, you must first want something. Diogenes' phrase was not just about the physical sun. It was about what happens when we let the power, wealth, and recognition of others come between us and what really matters. The sun there was a perfect metaphor. Simple, free, accessible to anyone, and blocked not by scarcity, but by the presence of those who want to impress us. Diogenes' lesson is not that you should throw everything away and sleep on the street. The lesson is more subtle and more difficult. Have you ever put off a decision because you needed someone's approval first? Have you ever worked more hours than you wanted to appear enough to someone who won't even notice? That's Alexandra standing in front of you, not as an enemy, like shadow. And the question is not whether you have the courage to send him away. It's if you even notice it's there. Alexandra died at the age of 32. Diogenes died in the same year, at almost 90. Two men, the same year, a lifetime of difference. One of them built one of the greatest empires the world has ever seen, and found peace neither with himself nor with death that came too soon. The other didn't build anything. He left no treaty, no formal school, no material inheritance. And yet, more than 2,000 years later, it's his name that comes up when you want to understand what it means to be truly free. Diogenes called himself cosmopolitans, citizens of the world, not from Sinope, not from Athens, not from anyone's empire. This word he invented became a philosophical concept, then a political one, and today it circulates in international relations treaties. A man without a home, no currency, no family name. He left more vocabulary to Western civilization than most of the kings who ignored him. Legend has it that when Diogenes was asked how he wanted to be buried, he replied, "Thrown outside the city walls, without a burial." When they insisted, "But what about wild animals?" he said, "Leave a stick beside my body, so that I can drive them away." They laughed at him. "But you'll be dead, you won't be able to use it." And Diogenes replied, "Then what do I care what animals do to my body? Get out of my light." Diogenes did not ask for permission. He didn't ask if he was being rude. He didn't apologize afterwards. The question is not having the courage to talk to Alexandra like that. It's knowing, first, recognizing when someone is between you and what really matters, and then realize that you don't need permission to ask them to leave. Diogenes chose to have nothing. Epictetus had no choice. He was sold, chained, treated like an object. And from within that prison, he created the philosophy that the most powerful man in Rome read every morning before ruling an empire. That's the next story.